So here it is, the Prairie Girl scarf. Isn't she squishy and beautiful? Look. So this scarf, I used the Gigi yarn and Lion Brand Re-Spun yarn in the colors of Pumice Stone and Fog. I'm calling it the Prairie Girl scarf because as I was working on this, it made me think of A Little House on the Prairie. You know, Laura Ingalls Wilder was amazing talking about describing the prairie lands and the flowers and all the things. And as I was working on this is what it made me think of, like oatmeals and little tufts of flower and, like, you know, the browns and the blues and the sky and the prairie lands. That's just, it gave me that vibe. So I'm calling it the Prairie Girl scarf. And it's so squishy and soft. So let's get started. All right, so for this scarf, I used the Big Twist Gigi yarn, as well as Lion Brand Re-Spun Thick and Quick. The two colors I used for the Thick and Quick is Pumice Stone and Fog, which is this color right here. I also used a size 8 crochet hook because it is a bulky yarn, and that's pretty much it. So for the pattern for this, it literally is just half double crochets the entire time. So let's get it started. Okay, so for this, we're going to start with chaining 16. So 16. And so you'll notice that the little tufts of flowers, sometimes I would like shove it down to the previous chain or pull it up into the next one. It just depends, and don't get too like, oh, worried about it, because you can always kind of poke them back how you want them to lay out. So don't worry about that too much. All right, so then we're going to turn into it. So yarn over once for a half double crochet, go into the chain second from the hook, and half double crochet. So see how this is like kind of stuck in there? I'm just going to pull it partially in, partially out. I think it's going to be best on out. All right, so there was the one that I just did. So now I'm going to go into this one. I do adjust it a little bit as I go. That's just kind of how I crochet. I know I'm not the fastest crocheter, and I know other people hold their yarn completely different. The way I hold my yarn is kind of odd. Well, maybe it's not odd. It's just I don't think I've ever seen anyone hold it like this. I spent so many days looking at tutorials of how to hold your yarn while you crochet, and some were just super beautifully looking, and it just didn't work for me. I had like my tension got weird. It was just a whole thing. So I just basically found my own way, and that's my best suggestion, right? You can look at the videos for people showing you how to, you know, put the yarn in their other hand, but this is just what ended up working out for me. And I found that the best way for me to finally get a system of how I held my yarn was I was just watching tutorials on doing stitches, and I would see how people held their yarn then. It wasn't a tutorial on how to hold your yarn, but it was a crochet tutorial on stitches. And so I just tried to find one that kind of fit what made sense with my hands. And then I don't know, kind of had my own little funky way of holding it. So maybe it's not funky. Maybe you hold yours in a funky way too. And I get better at holding it as I obviously build up on the rows. But right now I just want to make sure that I have a nice, you know, secure row that's nice and solid. All right, so that was row 1. So whether you're experienced or newbie or somewhat intermediate or whatever, I have found that using stitch markers, they just work for me, because I struggled so much sometimes with trying to find my beginnings and ends. So especially if you are beginning, it makes it so much easier, because I remember trying to find the beginning and the end of a stitch in a row was just so confusing. So one thing I also try to do is I will have, with my stitch markers for my rows, I will use like a regular, like any color for this side except for blue, for my odd rows. And then when I do my turn to get to my next row, I'll use blue. Again, this is how my brain works. Blue sounds like 2, and 2 is an even number. So blues are my evens, just in case I ever get swapped around. So anyway, at the end of this row, there are 15 stitches. So let's look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. So I'm at the end of the row, and I'm going to yarn over, turn it over, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. Okay, so yarn over, first stitch. And when you are using stitch markers, I should have done this the first time. After I make that very, very, very first stitch, I go to that first stitch and I go right here. So through the legs there. All right, so this is row 2, an even row. I've got my stitch markers. That's 1 stitch down, 14 more to go. Okay, so I'm at the end of row 4. Yarn over, pull through, turn, and I'm going to start row 5. So I do a yarn over, go into my stitch here. That is my first one of this row. And again, I'm using an odd number color, if that makes sense. So I know this is row 5. Okay, so far, looking pretty good. Every once in a while, just kind of smush it out to make sure it's not getting funky. You know, and it's always a good idea to check your count of stitches to make sure that you have 15 for every row. So where it gets a little interesting and kind of the fun part is deciding when you're going to change colors. So this is my first stitch. I went about, I don't know, 3 to 4 stitches in. But again, there's no hard and fast rule. What I found was I would switch colors when I would have, right after I had a little blob of this color, because I don't want it to look too like stripes with rows. I want it to kind of meld into each other. So I like how I ended with like a little tuft of blue here. And what I started with was I would do pumice stone. This is the pumice stone yarn. So we'll set this over here. And right now I'm going to take a pair of scissors and cut right about, we'll go right about there. Have a nice tail to weave in later. So if you have trouble switching colors, this is how I do it. So I put my thing in, my hook in the loop, yarn over, push it through, but then rather than grabbing the original yarn, I grab my new color, put it on that hook, and slide it through. And then I continue. I'll kind of tug on a little bit to make sure that, there we go. So it's a little bit not too loosey-goosey. And I'll pull it through. So then before I move on, so I have my new color introduced, give it a little bit of tugs right? Because I make sure I don't want it to be loose and weird. But now I'm going to continue with this pumice stone yarn. So I'm probably going to do that for about, oh gosh, maybe the next couple of rows. So I'll finish this row and then I'll do about 2 more rows. And as you're going, I've been trying to be very cognizant of putting my, incorporating the previous color into those rows. So I'm going to yarn over, put it into the next stitch, yarn over, complete my half double crochet. So you can kind of see here's the old color. I'm just going to kind of lay it on top. See that? Okay, so I yarn over, and I'll hold it. So see how it's incorporating it into there. So just I'm weaving as I go. Right, and especially at the beginning of changing colors, I want to make sure that I'm not being too loose, too tight, what have you. So just continue that. So now I'm at the end of this row. Got my stitch marker there to help me see where I need to go. I still have my old color here. So I yarned over. I'm going to put it through that hole with the stitch marker and pull it right up and complete my half double. I'm going to take out my stitch marker. I'm going to yarn over, turn. All right, so I chained 1 to turn over. And I have this little bit right here. I can do a couple of things. I can wrap it around so I can incorporate it into the next row, which I think I'll do. Might as well, right? So, come here. Put it up there. And that is my first stitch of this row. So, get my stitch marker. It's an even one. So I put it right there. There. I don't have much left of that original. In fact, I think when I did that, I was pretty much tying it off. So, yeah. And then continue this 6th row. All right, so I'm nearing the end of the 7th row. So 14, 15 again. Stitch marker, you can pull a little bit if that helps you get into that spot. All right, so let's count real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Yes, so that's exactly where I want to be. So I'm going to yarn over so I can chain and turn, do my first half double crochet into that first stitch. Nice little loop, so I have so I can move my stitch marker. And I think this is what, row 8? Yes, this is the 8th row, because again, I have my blue, which sounds like 2, which is an even number, so that way I know that I'm on my even row. So I'm going to yarn over, and probably about 3 to 4 stitches in, I'm going to switch to the fog color. But again, how you do it, how you switch into your colors, 1, 2, 3. You know, you could go back to the Gigi yarn if you wanted to, but I really wanted to try to make this as, I don't know, as organic as possible. So rather than switch right back to the Gigi, I wanted to get to that darker, that bluish color. So, right about there. And let me get my fog. Here's the fog yarn. So I've got my loop here. Actually, I might back that up a little bit. So when I switch my colors, I like to push it through and then pull up the new color. All right, hold that old color there. Get my new color. Come here, you. There we go. And pull it on through. And before I move on, I just want to, you know, tighten up a little bit, not too much, right? You don't want it to pucker and get weird, but just so that we don't have any weird, loosey-goosey, funky, you know, a loose stitch in the middle of all your other stitches. So anywho, okay, so that's my old one. Here's my new one. So yarn over, put it through. And so now I have the two colors. So I'm going to lay both the old colors, I'm sorry, the old color and the tail of the new one together. Pull it up, make sure I'm going around it. So the old one is right here. The tail of the new one's right here as well. Yarn over and then pull it through. All right, and again, I'm just going to adjust it to make sure I've got my tails in there. Should look, yeah, everything's looking nice and straight. Yarn over, next stitch. Again, I'm just working over the tail and the old yarn. And you can weave them in, you know, at the end with your tapestry needle and all that, but I figured it's kind of is a little bit easier and a little bit, I don't know, it feels more secure to me to do it this way. If I do have a very long tail, I'll work over as much as possible, and then I'll get my tapestry at the end. I'll take my tapestry needle and, you know, fine tune it. But for the bulk of it, I like to work in those tails. And so we go, the ends, I guess. Yep, so I have the tail of the new. I still have some of the old, but I've worked over the original tail of the new color. To get that in there. So this is row 8, and I'm probably going to do about the next, I don't know, probably at least like row 9. So I'm going to finish this row and do one more row. Over, first stitch, got a little loosey-goosey, so I'm going to just kind of make sure. So this is the tail from the pumice stone, so I still have quite a bit, so I'm working it up and through. And you'll see here's my little bit of tail from the, when I switch colors. So I could snip it right now, which I'm obviously doing. But I know that I worked in pretty good, so it should be all set. So anyway, I'm going to do one more solid row of the fog. Push it in there, pick up my new color, hold that down, and then yarn over with the Gigi, pull it through. And again, when you first put it in there, you need to, you know, just kind of finagle it a little bit, like I'm going to tug down on that a little, tug down on that. Okay, so I have my first stitch of the Gigi back in there. Gonna keep my tail right there, yarn over, go through, complete the half double crochet, yarn over, put it through, working over the tail of the previous color, complete the half double. And so it's interesting, even though the weight, like if you look, the yarn is a little bit smaller, right, than that. But because of the flowers and because of the bulk of it, it seamlessly goes in there. I'm not sure, you know, it's interesting how obviously the Re-Spun is a thicker yarn, but they really mix well together. I think because of the little, I keep calling them flowers, the little tufts, the tufts of colors there. But because of those, it makes you want to have a thicker, a bigger millimeter hook. So I'm using an 8, using my Clover Amour, my favorite hooks. I've tried several different hooks, and I kept hearing about the Clover Amour, and so I bought that set. And even after I bought that set, I still tried out a few more just to, you know, see if it worked out. And it's my favorite. Love them. So you can buy a set of the, like up to, I think it's up to 6, 5.5, 6 millimeter, like in a set. And then you can buy like the bigger ones together. I don't know if the bigger ones come in I feel like I maybe did get a set one time. Anywho. All right, so I'm near the end. There's my stitch marker. So yarn over, push it through. And here's my tail still. Got my stitch marker. Where are you? And so I'm just going to continue on with the Gigi yarn onto the next 3 or 4 rows. So as I'm working on this row with the Gigi yarn, so I want you to see how I work the flowers. I'm going to call them flowers. Tufts, so it doesn't make it messy enough. Right. So I'm yarning over. Oh, and there's a flower. So I can either pull it through or shove it in. I'm going to keep it pulled through a little bit because, again, I'm using the thicker Lion Brand Re-Spun. So you have that flexibility of how you want the flowers to go. So like I can pull it through, or if it seems like it's not tight enough, I can just let it sit right in the stitches. It just, you know, I just kind of have to feel what works best, because that's the nature of this yarn. It has, you know, these little random tufts, like that one's gonna be perfect to pull through, right? Maybe I'll get to the end of the row. See, so, and again, it's okay that it's a little bulky, funky because of the coordinating yarn that I'm using. It leaves that room for the chunky little tufts of flowers. So there she is. I'm just going to kind of put it in that stitch, work it around, chain 1, turn. And I can either shove it there, shove it. It really, honestly, I don't think it matters because of the stitch, they half double. It is very, you know, reversible. That got weird. Okay. Got distracted. Okay, so yarn over, push it through. Show. Over first stitch. Okay. And so I'm going to show you the original scarf and where we're at with this. And kind of the method of how I would switch colors. So, get a little bit in there. I think the key is you don't, at least for me, I mean, you can do it however you want, right? Because it's just a half double stitch all the way through, right? So here is my original one right here, okay? And several stitches in. So I would do like about 2 rows, maybe 2.5, and then switch to the Gigi and the fog. And then like, look, for example, this. So this one I did quite a bit of fog, and I just a little bit of the pumice stone, right? Just a smidge, because I don't want it to look so rigid where like every 3.5 rows I switch, right? So fog, switch to pumice for a little, back to fog very short. And then I went to the Gigi, did that for a while, and then to the pumice, fog, and this time I just went straight from the fog to the Gigi, and so on and so on. So there you have it, the Prairie Girl scarf. It's about 7 inches wide, about 64 inches long. You can adjust either of those things by making less, a smaller chain across rather than 16, do something else. And, decreasing or increasing how many rows you want to do. Again, you can make it longer, shorter that way. Again, because everything is just a half double crochet all the way across. So just make sure you chain an even number because you want to have an odd number. That's just how it works out best, at least in my experience. So have fun with it. There are several other colors of the Gigi yarn. I purchased a few just the other day. I'm going to play with those a little bit, but right now I'm going to use this sweet girl to keep me warm and cozy. And she's nice and squishy, and I just can't wait to wear her out. Have a good one. Thanks. Oh, and this project only took about 1.5 skeins of Gigi, and oh my gosh, maybe a third up to a half of the re-spun yarn. Those re-spun yarns are huge though. They are like 3 balls in one. I feel like they're pretty big. So, but yeah, 1.5 skeins of the Gigi should make this work.